The morning felt like any other, until the blast ripped the sky open. March 23, 2005. A warm, hazy afternoon settled over the BP refinery in Texas City, a 1,200-acre maze of steel towers, pipes, and pressure vessels just off the Gulf Coast. The smell of gasoline hung thick in the air. It was the third-largest refinery in the United States, capable of processing over 400,000 barrels a day. But inside its aging infrastructure, corners had been cut, procedures blurred, and budgets slashed. Beneath the surface, something was waiting to go wrong. Just before 11 a.m., operators began restarting the isomerization unit, a routine process meant to convert low-grade gasoline into a higher-octane blend. The unit had been offline for maintenance. Now it was time to bring it back to life. Workers turned valves, heated lines, pressurized vessels, and then they began filling the raffinate splitter tower, a tall, narrow column that was supposed to hold only a limited volume of hydrocarbons. But something wasn't right. The level gauge on the tower read low. The sight glass showed plenty of space left, so they kept pumping. But what no one realized was that the instruments were lying. The tower was already dangerously full, overfilled with volatile liquid. Operators thought they were running a controlled startup. In reality, they were fueling a bomb. By 12:30 p.m., the raffinate splitter was overflowing. Liquid hydrocarbons surged down a stack meant only for vapors. They poured into a ground-level vent system that had no flame arresters. In seconds, a dense, invisible vapor cloud crept outward, rolling low across the refinery floor, slipping under vehicles, equipment, and trailers. At least 2 trailers sat less than 150 feet from the unit, well within the blast radius. Inside, contractors were holding meetings. Others were eating lunch, making phone calls, or wrapping up paperwork. They didn't know they were surrounded by flammable gas. And then came the spark. At 1:20 p.m., a pickup truck or nearby compressor kicked on. Or maybe it was static. The source was never confirmed. But somewhere in the gas, a spark ignited the vapor cloud, and in an instant, the world exploded. A deafening roar ripped across Texas City. The shock wave flattened steel structures and shattered windows in buildings half a mile away. Fire erupted in every direction. Metal twisted like ribbon. Trailers lifted into the air and disintegrated in mid-flight. A mushroom cloud rose from the site, billowing black smoke over the skyline. 17 people died. More than 170 were injured. Some were killed instantly inside the trailers, blown apart or crushed beneath debris. Others were burned beyond recognition. Emergency responders raced in through the flames, pulling survivors from rubble. Sirens echoed through the complex for hours. But the fire was only the beginning. What followed would reveal a catastrophe built over years. Investigators from the Chemical Safety Board and OSHA arrived within hours. What they found was staggering. Instruments had failed. Alarms hadn't sounded. Operators hadn't received proper training. The startup procedure had no safeguards to prevent overfilling. And worst of all, the company had known the risks. Years earlier, similar incidents had occurred. Near misses, flash fires, overflows. Internal audits flagged the isomerization unit as dangerous. But cost pressures loomed. BP had slashed training budgets. Safety improvements were delayed. Managers focused on output, and bonuses were tied to keeping costs down. The trailers where workers died had been placed too close to dangerous units, in direct violation of BP's own siting policies. But no one had moved them. Nobody wanted to pause operations. The culture punished caution and rewarded speed. Afterward, BP issued public apologies. They accepted responsibility. But when the penalties came, they were hollow. OSHA fined BP $21 million, the largest fine in its history at the time. It was a fraction of BP's quarterly profits. Lawsuits followed, families sued, survivors testified. BP eventually paid over $1.5 billion in civil settlements. They promised reforms. But 5 years later, another explosion in the Gulf of Mexico would show just how little had changed. The Texas City disaster was not an accident. It was a system breaking down, a company that gambled with lives, a chain of ignored warnings, faulty equipment, and institutional silence. And for 17 workers, fathers, daughters, friends, it ended in fire. Thank you for listening to Road to Ruins. Subscribe for more true stories where systems fail and people pay the price.